Right now, Donald Trump is in California meeting with officials after looking at the wildfire devastation. Trump was greeted on the tarmac by the state's Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom, who he has blamed for the wildfire response. Standing next to Newsom, Trump told reporters, quote, "We are going to take care of things," which is a very different tone than he had just earlier today when he's talking about punishing California. While visiting areas affected by Hurricane Helene in North Carolina, which voted for Trump, which obviously makes a big difference in his mind, Trump floated the idea of withholding aid from California in the midst of the most expensive natural disaster of all time if they did not implement voter ID. He also said he wants to get rid of or overhaul the Federal Emergency Management Agency, better known as FEMA. Of course, that's the federal agency responsible for coordinating with state and local agencies after natural disasters. Congressman Robert Garcia is a Democrat who represents parts of Los Angeles County, and he joins me now. I want to play for you what he said about FEMA, because I think a lot of people, obviously, disaster relief is difficult. People have had all kinds of run the range of experiences with FEMA, and often they're interfacing with FEMA at the most difficult moment in their lives. So there can be frustrations. But whether you think this is a good idea, take a listen.
I'll also be signing an executive order to begin the process of fundamentally reforming and overhauling FEMA, or maybe getting rid of FEMA. I think, frankly, FEMA is not good.
Obviously, the president can't unilaterally get rid of FEMA. It's congressionally constituted. What do you think of that?
I mean, look, it's hard to know what to think of the president's visit today. I'm here back home in California. The fires have been completely devastating. I'm glad that the governor was able to greet him in a way that looks like there could be some partnership. But we shouldn't trust Donald Trump. He has been very clear that he wants to condition aid. Mike Johnson and the Republicans in the House have said the exact same thing. And just hours before his visit, he's putting conditions on what he's going to essentially ask for from our state. And so we should have conditions. And absolutely what we should not be doing is eliminating FEMA. This is an agency with incredible people, men and women who have worked to literally rescue people's lives, their livelihoods, and help people rebuild in emergencies. These are some of the best emergency management people in the world work for FEMA. And he just wants to just eliminate it, just with the stroke of a pen. And so I'm glad the president is there. Clearly, we need that support. But I'm not sure which Donald Trump we're going to get in the next hour or the next day. What we need is an unconditional support and declaration that we're going to get our disaster aid with no conditions.
And of course, that's exactly what happened in myriad disasters, including just last year for the victims of Hurricane Helene. Oh, there was no conditions put on it. There was no Democrats asking for that. It was not thinkable. I want to note that the FEMA reform or privatization or abolition, like many of the things that have come up in the first week of the Trump administration, is echoed in Project 2025, which he said he'd never read and had nothing to do with. They talk about the opportunity to include privatizing FEMA, reforming it, or shift the majority of preparedness response costs to states and localities instead of the federal government, which, of course, is what he's talking about. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. It aligns there. One thing that's sort of, I don't want to get too in the weeds of some of his more absurd delusions, but my understanding of the condition of aid, as I heard it discussed by your colleagues who are Republicans, is that at least they were plausibly connecting it to some policy around how fires are dealt with. But today he says voter ID. Like, no, it has nothing to do with, oh, we're going to condition aid if you do this about, like, your land use. He wants voter ID for California because, as he told Dr. Phil, if Jesus counted the votes, he would have won California.
And by the way, you need an ID. You need to have actual identification to vote in California, to register to vote. That's very basic. So I'm not sure the president or the Republicans in the House know what they're talking about. And yes, Chris, you're absolutely right. In Project 25, it literally says to eliminate FEMA and to essentially give those funds to the states. President Trump repeated that today. And so Project 2025 is here. And to think that we're going to implement, take away federal aid, move it to the states in times of major disasters is not acceptable. And I think Democrats in the House and Congress have been pretty clear. This is a non-starter. We will not support conditioning aid, certainly not to some bizarre way of treating fires, which is not really realistic, but obviously not to policy and to state law back in the state of California. And so look, I hope the president has a good visit. I think the governor is doing a great job. We need our disaster aid, and we absolutely should not be eliminating FEMA for disasters across the country, which are likely to happen again in the future.
Final, quickly, the president has some very strange fixations and I think false ideas about California hydrology, where water comes from. I think he's confused a set of beefs that the Central Valley farmers have about California water management from the Sierras with the way that Los Angeles gets water. And now he's talking about opening up. Is there some secret store of water that's not open that if you opened would solve Southern California's fires?
Absolutely not. And I know he's just signing some executive order right now that's somehow opening up water supplies from the north. I mean, unfortunately, that is a bizarre fairy tale that he's living in. That just does not exist. We have a water supply. The cause of these fires, let's be crystal clear, have been historic winds that have come through and moved fires across the LA region and across Southern California. We are seeing the climate crisis here in California. We are seeing these winds that are moving these fires at quick speeds. That has been the main cause. It has not been a water issue. And yes, there are infrastructure investments that need to be made, as it need to be made across the country. What we really need is that commitment on disaster relief. And so I think this executive order and his fixation on this water issue is bizarre.